Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My husband said the family trip was canceled. Money was tight. We would stay home that year. I believed him and worked that weekend. Later, I saw his sister's post. A big dinner, everyone there but me. And him with another woman. Then he texted, "Need $2,800. It is urgent." I wrote back, "Ask your family." It is a strange thing to look back at a life you thought you knew and see it for what it really was. For 7 years, my marriage to Derek felt like a comfortable old sweater. Maybe not exciting, not the kind of thing you would wear out to a party, but it was warm. It was reliable. It was home, or so I believed. My name is Brenda, and for 25 years, I have been an intensive care nurse. My world is one of controlled chaos, the steady beep of heart monitors, the hiss of ventilators, the quiet, desperate prayers of families in waiting rooms. I have always been the person who stays calm when everything is falling apart, the one who holds it all together. It was a role I was good at, a role I thought I left at the hospital when I clocked out. I never imagined the biggest crisis I would ever have to manage would be my own. Derek and I met in our late 20s. He was charming, with a quick smile and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. I was a nurse, practical, a little serious, and more comfortable with a patient's chart than with small talk. We were opposites, and I suppose that is what drew us together. Our wedding was a simple affair at the local courthouse. He wore his friend's suit, a size too big in the shoulders, and I wore a simple cream-colored dress I had found on a clearance rack. We did not have money for a honeymoon, so we spent the weekend painting our tiny, stuffy apartment and dreaming about the future. We laughed, holding paintbrushes instead of champagne glasses, and we truly believed that our love was enough to build a life on. For the first couple of years, it felt that way. His family welcomed me with open arms. His mother, Loretta, was a formidable woman, but she had a knack for baking, and she would often show up at our door with a warm apple pie, her way of showing affection. His sister, Shanice, was younger, bubbly, and she immediately started calling me the sister she had always wanted. They felt like the family I never had. I was the primary breadwinner, and I never minded. My nursing salary was solid and dependable, with good benefits and overtime potential. Derek's career was less defined. He called himself a consultant, which seemed to involve an endless series of networking lunches and rounds of golf with men who might one day become clients. The big contracts always seemed to be just around the corner, a carrot dangling just out of reach. So I worked. I picked up extra shifts. I managed our budget with meticulous care, stretching every dollar. I was the bedrock of our life together, and I took a quiet pride in that. The shift, the subtle poisoning of our partnership, began about 3 years in. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday night. I had just gotten home from a grueling 12-hour shift, my feet aching, and was reheating some leftover pasta. Derek put his mother on speakerphone. Loretta's voice, usually so strong and commanding, was thin and reedy, laced with a tremor I had never heard before. "Derek, I do not know what we are going to do," she began, and I could hear a sniffle. "The new property tax assessment came in for the lake house. It has gone up so much. With your father's pension being what it is, I have been running the numbers all day. We cannot afford it." I stopped stirring my pasta and looked at Derek. His face, illuminated by the dim kitchen light, was a portrait of devastation. The lake house was not just a building to him. It was his entire childhood. It was summers spent fishing off the dock, Christmases with the whole family crammed into the living room. The place he had learned to swim, to skip stones, to be himself. "We might have to sell it," Loretta whispered, her voice cracking. All those memories just gone. Watching Derek's shoulders slump, seeing the genuine pain in his eyes, I felt a familiar urge rise up in me, the nurse's instinct to fix, to soothe, to make it better. The words came out of my mouth before I had even fully formed the thought. "We can help Loretta," I said, my voice firm. Derek's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "We can, just for a little while, until you and Dad get back on your feet. We can cover the payments." A sob erupted from the phone. "Oh, Brenda, are you serious? You are an angel. A true angel sent from heaven. The daughter I never had." Derek looked at me, his eyes shining with tears of gratitude. He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and wrapped me in a hug, burying his face in my hair. "You are amazing," he murmured. "Thank you. I do not know what I would do without you." In that moment, I felt like a hero. I felt valued and essential. That feeling was worth more than any amount of money. That first payment was a lump sum for the taxes. But then a few months later, it was a call about the aging furnace. Then the dock needed repairs. It soon became clear that a monthly contribution was needed. The figure they landed on was $2,800. Every single month, to cover the mortgage and upkeep. Derek, ever the helpful son, took charge of the logistics. Each month, after my paycheck deposited into our joint account, he would sit at our laptop. "Just sending the money to Mom," he would announce cheerfully. "She said to tell you she prays for you every night." And just like that, $2,800 would vanish. For 3 years, this was our unwavering routine. 36 payments. $100,800. I knew the number by heart. It was the cost of 3 new cars. It was a down payment on a house of our own. It was the number I saw every time I chose the generic brand at the grocery store. Every time I patched a hole in my favorite scrubs instead of buying new ones. Every time I heard my old Honda make a terrifying rattling sound and prayed it would get me to work just one more day. It was the price of Derek's happiness. I told myself it was the cost of being a good wife, a good daughter-in-law. It was the cost of family. The week that my carefully constructed world came crashing down, it started, as these things so often do, with a lie. It was a Wednesday evening in late July. I was sitting at our wobbly kitchen table, the one we had rescued from the curb years ago, trying to plan our meals for the week to save a little extra money. Derek walked in and sat across from me, avoiding my gaze. He had a look on his face I had seen before, the look he got when he was about to deliver bad news he knew would hurt me, but that he was determined to deliver anyway. "Brenda, I have something to tell you," he started, picking at a loose thread on the placemat. "And I am really sorry about it." I put my pen down, my stomach tightening. "What is it, Derek?" He finally looked up, his eyes filled with a carefully rehearsed sadness. "We have to cancel the family lake trip this year." The air went out of my lungs. It was just 1 week a year, but it was my week. It was the one time I could turn off the part of my brain that was constantly monitoring heart rates and medication dosages. It was my only real vacation. "What? Why?" I asked, my voice small. "I thought everything was arranged." "I know, and I feel awful," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. His felt warm and steady. Mine was suddenly cold. "It is the money, honey. It is tighter than ever. With us helping out Mom and Dad, and with my business hitting a slow patch, we just cannot justify the expense right now. The gas, the food, everything, it adds up." I stared at him, my mind scrambling. I had already been looking forward to it, picturing myself sitting on the dock with a book, the smell of pine in the air. The disappointment was a sharp, bitter pill. But then I looked at his face, at the anguish he was performing so masterfully. And the good wife in me took over. The fixer, the caretaker. "Hey," I said softly, squeezing his hand. "It is all right. Really. We are a team. We will get through this." My brain, ever practical, was already shifting gears. If we were not spending money on the trip, and if I could work, the financial gain would be significant. You know what? I will see if I can pick up some extra shifts that weekend. The holiday pay is time and a half. It would really help us get ahead. The relief that washed over his face was instantaneous and profound. It should have been a red flag, but I was too busy trying to be supportive to notice. "Would you really do that?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. "Brenda, you are the best. Thank you for being so understanding. I knew you would be." He sold it so well. He talked about how disappointed Loretta and Shanice would be, how they would have to break the news to the whole family. I felt a pang of guilt, as if I were somehow responsible for their canceled plans. That night, before going to bed, I logged into the hospital's scheduling portal. The weekend shifts for the week of the trip were still open. Of course, nobody wanted them. I clicked my name into the slots for a 12-hour shift on Saturday and another on Sunday. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I was doing the right thing. I was making a necessary sacrifice. The Friday morning I was set to leave for that grueling weekend of work. Derek was a different man. He was attentive, affectionate. He woke up early to make me coffee, not the cheap store-brand stuff we usually drank, but the expensive beans from the specialty shop he knew I loved. He watched me as I got ready, a strange, intense look in his eyes. As I shouldered my work bag, heavy with the protein bars and instant noodles that would be my meals for the next 48 hours, he pulled me into a hug. "I love you," he whispered against my forehead, holding me tighter than usual. "Thank you for everything you do for us." "I love you too," I mumbled, my mind already on the long day ahead. Your family is my family. Looking back, I understand that look in his eyes. It was not gratitude. It was not love. It was guilt. It was the look of a man saying goodbye to the woman he was about to betray on a scale I could not possibly imagine. The hospital was a war zone that weekend, which was almost a mercy. A horrific multi-car pileup on the interstate meant that every bed in the intensive care unit was full, and the emergency room was a constant stream of sirens and stretchers. For hours on end, I did not have a moment to think about my own life. I was too busy living in the space between life and death with my patients. I comforted a terrified mother whose teenage son was on a ventilator. I held the hand of an elderly man as he took his last breath. I was immersed in real, raw human suffering, and it put my own petty disappointment about a canceled vacation into perspective. Or so I thought. The moment of revelation did not come with a bang, but with the quiet glow of a smartphone screen in a dimly lit break room. It was almost 9 at night on Saturday. I had a precious 30-minute break, and I was slumped in a lumpy armchair, my body screaming with exhaustion. I was eating a stale granola bar and scrolling through social media, the mindless digital river a welcome distraction. That was when I saw it. A new post from Shanice, Derek's sister. The picture was a selfie of her and Loretta, both of them beaming, with the unmistakable backdrop of the lake behind them. My heart gave a painful lurch. Maybe they just went up for the day, I told myself, a desperate attempt to explain away the sick feeling coiling in my gut. But then I tapped on her profile and saw she had posted a video to her story just an hour earlier. My thumb trembled as I pressed play. The video started with a sweeping shot of the sunset glittering on the water. It was beautiful. Then the camera panned across a long, beautifully set dining table on the deck. It was laden with a feast. I saw the glazed ham I had practically paid for, the corn on the cob, the potato salad, Loretta's famous peach cobbler. The deck was strung with new, professional-looking fairy lights, and the table was surrounded by people. All of them. Loretta, her husband Leon, Derek's brother Reggie, Shanice, and her boyfriend. They were all raising champagne glasses in a toast. And then, for 2 devastating seconds, the camera landed on my husband. He was standing by the grill, a bottle of expensive beer in his hand, the kind we had agreed was a budget buster months ago. He looked tanned, relaxed, and utterly happy. He was not looking at the camera. He was looking at someone just out of frame. And then that someone stepped into the shot. It was a woman I had never seen before. She was a black woman, probably 10 years younger than me, wearing a white sundress that complemented her brown skin. She laughed at something Derek said, and he laughed back, a genuine, unburdened laugh I had not heard from him in years. He casually reached out and put his arm around her waist, pulling her closer to his side. It was not an awkward, friendly gesture. It was intimate. It was possessive. It was the gesture of a man with his partner. She leaned her head on his shoulder for a moment, and they both smiled. The break room suddenly felt airless. The stale granola bar turned to ash in my mouth. I could not breathe. The trip was not canceled. My husband was not struggling. He was on a vacation paid for with my sweat and sacrifice, with his entire family and his mistress. I did not just watch the video once. I watched it over and over, maybe 10, 15, 20 times. I became a detective of my own heartbreak. Each viewing revealed a new cruel detail. The brand new looking sundress Loretta was wearing, the expensive bottle of wine someone had brought, the relaxed, happy faces of everyone who knew. They all knew. They had to. They had all participated in this lie. They had let me work myself to the bone so they could enjoy this perfect family weekend, complete with Derek's new woman, whose name I would later learn was Crystal. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, it was almost elegant in its cruelty. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. It was not sadness. It was rage. A pure, clean, clarifying rage. My shift still had hours to go, but I knew my life had just changed forever. I walked out of the break room, my face a calm, professional mask. But inside, a revolution was starting. The good wife was gone. In her place, someone new was being born. The rest of that night, I operated on pure adrenaline and fury. Every intravenous line I inserted, every chart I updated, every comforting word I offered to a patient's family was done with a chilling, detached precision. My body was on autopilot, performing the familiar dance of a nurse in intensive care, but my mind was a world away. It was at a lake house, replaying a 2-second clip of my husband's arm around another woman's waist. It was in our shared bank account, mentally calculating the staggering sum of my own stupidity. $100,800. The number echoed in my head, each digit a testament to my blindness. Just before my shift ended, as the first hints of dawn were breaking, my phone buzzed. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought it might be an apology, a confession. But when I pulled it from my pocket, the glowing screen displayed a message that was so tone-deaf, so glaringly transactional, it felt like a splash of ice water to the face. It was a text from Derek. Need $2,800. It is urgent. The timing was almost poetic. There he was, likely waking up in a comfortable bed next to his mistress after a weekend of feasting and drinking on my dime, and his first thought was to reach out for his next allowance. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it was breathtaking. I did not reply immediately. I walked down the quiet pre-dawn hallway of the hospital, the squeak of my sneakers the only sound. I found myself standing in front of the supply closet, the place where just a few hours earlier, my old life had ended. I slipped inside, the door clicking shut behind me, and leaned against a stack of boxes, the sharp, clean smell of antiseptic a stark contrast to the rottenness I felt inside. I read his message again. Need $2,800. It is urgent. My urgency. My money. His life. My thumbs, which had trembled when I first saw the video, were now perfectly steady. I was not emotional anymore. I was cold. I was a surgeon preparing to make a clean, decisive cut. I typed out the 3 words that had been forming in my mind for hours. Ask your family. I pressed send. The response was instantaneous. My phone did not buzz with a text back. It rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I could picture him perfectly, sitting up in bed, his face a mixture of confusion and panic, wondering why his usually compliant wife had suddenly malfunctioned. I stared at his name, at the insistent vibration in my palm. The old Brenda would have answered, desperate for an explanation, ready to accept any lie he offered. But the old Brenda was gone. I let the phone ring 3 times, 3 sharp, jarring notes in the silent closet. Then, with a feeling of profound, liberating finality, I pressed the red decline button. I silenced his call. I silenced his access to my life. I walked out of that closet, grabbed my bag, and clocked out. My marriage was over. I had just hung up on it. I spent most of Sunday in a daze, driving around aimlessly before finally checking into a cheap motel near the airport. I could not face our apartment. The thought of sleeping in our bed, surrounded by 7 years of shared memories that now felt like props in a long-running play, was unbearable. I lay on the stiff, starched sheets of the motel bed and stared at the ceiling, the events of the last 24 hours playing on a loop in my head. I did not cry. The hurt was too deep for tears. It had solidified into a cold, heavy stone in my chest. He did not try to call again. He did not text. The silence from his end was more damning than any angry outburst could have been. He was probably scrambling, conferring with Loretta and Shanice, trying to figure out how to manage their suddenly rebellious cash machine. On Monday morning, fueled by terrible motel coffee and a burning sense of purpose, I went to our apartment. I needed to see it one last time. I needed to face the scene of the crime. I was sitting at our wobbly kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee, when I heard his key in the lock. My heart began to pound, a frantic, trapped bird against my ribs. He walked in, and the sheer normality of it was shocking. He was smiling, carrying a large paper bag from an expensive bakery downtown and a cardboard tray holding 2 large coffees. He was tanned, rested, and looked utterly carefree. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice as bright and breezy as a summer morning. He set the bag on the table. "I figured you would be exhausted after all those shifts. They have those almond croissants you like." He placed a coffee in front of me and leaned in to kiss my cheek. I did not pull away, but I did not lean in either. I was a statue. He either did not notice or chose to ignore it. "So, how was your weekend?" he asked, busying himself with unpacking the bag of pastries. The smell of butter and sugar filled the air, a sickeningly sweet scent of deceit. "Long," I said, my voice carefully neutral. The shifts were brutal. We were swamped. I took a sip of the coffee. It was perfect. Oat milk, extra shot. He remembered. The small, thoughtful gesture, juxtaposed with his monumental betrayal, was a special kind of cruelty. "How was your weekend? You said you were just going to stay here and work." He bit into a croissant, showering the table with flaky crumbs. "Yes, mostly," he said, chewing thoughtfully. "It was pretty quiet. I did some reading, worked on a proposal. I sat out on the balcony for a bit on Saturday. Actually got a bit of sun. He gestured to his tan face with a sheepish grin. Forgot sunscreen like an idiot. The lie was so bald-faced, so insulting in its lack of creativity, that I almost had to admire his nerve. Our balcony was a tiny north-facing slab of concrete that got, at best, 45 minutes of weak, indirect sunlight a day. He could not have gotten that tan there unless he had basted himself in cooking oil and strapped himself to a reflector dish. I just nodded slowly, taking another sip of coffee. Right, the balcony. He finished his croissant and stood up, stretching like a contented cat. Well, I had better go shower. I have a client meeting at 10. He headed toward the bathroom, and a moment later, I heard the water running. Then he started to sing. It was some cheerful, off-key pop song from the radio. He only ever sang in the shower when he was completely, utterly relaxed, without a single worry in the world. The sound of his happy, carefree singing was the final trigger. While he washed away the evidence of his weekend getaway, I got to work. I moved to the laptop on our small desk. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. It was with a cold, methodical purpose. I logged into our joint banking account. The history loaded, a digital record of my long-term delusion. There they were, 36 neat lines, one for the first of every month for 3 years. $2,800. $2,800. $2,800. The memos were a masterclass in manipulation. Family support. Property tax help. Mom's medical. Lake house emergency. I began the grim task. Right-click, save screenshot. Over and over. I documented every single transfer. My phone, which had been a source of such pain just a day before now, became my arsenal. I created a new photo album, a gallery of my own fleecing. When I was done, I opened a new browser tab. I created a brand new secure cloud storage account. The name I used was not Brenda Walker. It was Brenda Connolly, my maiden name, a name that suddenly felt like my own again. I uploaded every single screenshot, every piece of damning evidence, into a folder I titled simply The Truth. The shower stopped. He would be out in 5 minutes. I worked quickly, closing the browser tabs, clearing the history. By the time Derek emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, hair damp, smelling of my expensive lavender shampoo, I was back at the kitchen table, calmly scrolling through a news application on my phone, the picture of a devoted wife waiting for her husband. The performance of a lifetime, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was going to win. The next 2 days were a silent, tense ballet of deception. I moved through our apartment, performing the mundane rituals of our life together, but as a stranger in my own home. I made dinner, but I felt nothing as we sat across from each other at that wobbly table. We watched television, the canned laughter from some sitcom filling the suffocating silence between us. I was an actress playing the role of Brenda Walker, while the real Brenda, Brenda Connolly, was quietly planning her exit backstage. Derek, for his part, seemed completely oblivious. He chatted about his client meetings, about sports, about a funny video he saw online. He was either the world's greatest actor or the world's most arrogant fool. I decided it was a healthy mix of both. On Wednesday evening, he casually dropped another bomb, thinking it was a peace offering. "Good news," he said as we were clearing the dinner plates. "I was talking to Mom today. It sounds like Dad's new pension plan is finally kicking in. They are doing much better financially." He smiled at me, a warm, reassuring smile. "I think maybe they will not need our help for much longer. We might finally be able to start saving for ourselves." I just nodded, a tight, false smile plastered on my face. "That is great news, Derek." Inside, I was calculating how many of my own dreams I had deferred, thinking I was helping his struggling parents. The student loans I could have paid off. The reliable car I desperately needed. The simple luxury of a vacation where I was not footing the bill for a party I was not invited to. The final act began on Thursday. I was at work in the middle of a hectic day, trying to coordinate a patient transfer. I was in the hospital cafeteria for a quick lunch, staring at a plate of wilted lettuce. That was all I could justify spending money on. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Derek. My heart hammered. This was it, the moment of truth. The message read, "Babe, need that $2,800 today. Mom's mortgage is due. It is urgent. Can you transfer?" I read the words 3 times. After his performance of the last few days, after his cheerful news about his parents' improving finances, he still had the audacity to send this text. He was not just a liar and a cheat. He was lazy. He could not even be bothered to invent a new crisis. A strange calm settled over me. I was not angry anymore. I was just done. I stood up, leaving my half-eaten salad behind, and walked with a purpose I had not felt in years. I did not head for the supply closet this time. I walked to a small private consultation room at the end of the hall, a room where we delivered bad news to families. It seemed fitting. I closed the door, sat down in one of the uncomfortable chairs, and I called him. He picked up on the first ring, his voice sounding cheerful and expectant. "Hey, did you get my text?" "I did, Derek," I said, my voice as sterile and steady as the room around me. "But I have a question for you first." "All right, go ahead," he said, a note of caution creeping into his voice. "I need you to be honest with me for once in your life," I began. "Who is Crystal?" The silence that followed was thick and heavy. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, the sound shallow and panicked. I pictured him in his home office, our home office, probably swiveling in his comfortable chair, caught completely off guard. "Crystal? Oh, Crystal," he finally sputtered, his attempt at nonchalance a spectacular failure. "I told you, she is just a friend of the family. A new friend of Shanice's. We have all been getting to know her." "Just a friend of the family," I repeated, my voice dripping with ice. "That is your final answer. The woman you had your arm wrapped around all weekend. The woman you were laughing with while I was here, covered in who knows what, trying to keep people alive. That is just a friend." "Brenda, you are twisting things," he said, his voice rising in desperation. "It was not like that. You are being dramatic. We did not want you to feel awkward or left out meeting someone new. That is all it was. We were trying to protect you." The word protect lit a fire in my veins. "Protect me?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "Let me tell you what that word does not mean, Derek. It does not mean lying to your wife about a vacation being canceled. It does not mean stealing over $100,000 from her over 3 years to fund your family's lifestyle. And it certainly does not mean taking your mistress on that very vacation and then having the nerve to text me for more money. She is not my mistress," he shouted, his voice cracking with the strain of the lie. "You are paranoid." "Am I?" I shot back. "Then explain it to me. Explain the video. Explain her. Explain why your struggling mother was wearing a brand new dress while I am wearing scrubs with a hole in the pocket. Explain it to me, Derek. Make it make sense." He could not. All that came through the phone was his ragged, panicked breathing. I had him, and he knew it. "I have to go now, Derek," I said, my voice suddenly calm again. "I have to get back to my job. I have to deal with actual emergencies, not the pathetic, manufactured ones you and your family create." And for the second time in less than a week, I hung up on my husband. This time, I knew it was for good. That evening, when I pushed open the door to our apartment, I was hit by a wall of sensory overload. The place was dark except for the flickering glow of dozens of candles, their vanilla scent thick and cloying in the air. On our wobbly kitchen table, which was now covered with a white tablecloth, was our wedding china, the plates and glasses we had not used since our first anniversary. The air smelled of garlic, basil, and simmering tomatoes. It was a scene straight out of a romantic drama. Derek emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on an apron. He was wearing one of his best shirts, the burgundy one I had bought him for Christmas. He was holding a bottle of wine, an expensive Italian red we had not been able to afford in years. His face was a carefully constructed mask of sorrow and contrition. "Brenda," he said, his voice a soft, pleading whisper. "Please do not say anything yet. Just sit down. I made dinner. Your favorite, pasta arrabbiata. Let me explain everything." I was so tired. My feet ached from my shift, and my soul ached from his betrayal. I did not have the energy to fight, so I just sank into the chair he pulled out for me. The sheer theatrical absurdity of it all was almost fascinating. This was his desperate attempt to erase everything. He poured the wine, his hands trembling just enough to be noticeable. He served the pasta with the focused intensity of a gourmet chef. Then he sat down across from me, the candlelight casting dancing shadows on his face, making him look like a tragic hero in a play. "Everyone feels terrible," he began, his voice choked with emotion. "Mama's been crying all day. She called me as soon as you hung up on her. She never, ever meant to hurt you." I just stared at my plate. The pasta actually looked perfect. Such a waste. "Your mother," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "The woman who has cashed my $2,800 payments every month for 36 months, is crying because her automatic teller machine has been shut down. It is not about the money, Brenda," he insisted, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back and placed it in my lap. It was not. She did not know I had not told you about the trip. She just assumed you knew and could not get the time off. It was a misunderstanding. And Crystal? I asked, finally meeting his gaze. Was she a misunderstanding too? He flinched. Brenda, honestly, you are blowing that way out of proportion. She is a friend of Shanice's who was going through a bad breakup. We were all just being nice to her. You know how friendly our family is. He tried a different angle. We were thinking of you. We know how much you hate big, loud gatherings. You are always so exhausted after your shifts. We honestly thought, we were doing you a favor by giving you a quiet weekend to yourself. The audacity of that lie, the patronizing, insulting twist of it, was the final straw. A favor? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. You thought you were doing me a favor by lying to me, excluding me, and replacing me with another woman, all while spending my money? Let me be very clear, Derek. Your family has taken over $100,000 from me. While I was wearing out my shoes, walking miles on hospital floors, your mother was buying new dresses. While I was eating instant noodles in the break room, you were all having a feast. Do not you dare try to tell me this was for my benefit. That is an exaggeration, he sputtered, his composure finally cracking. Is it? I said, pushing my chair back and standing up. I have every single bank statement, Derek. Every screenshot, every date, every amount. I have the truth. And the truth is, I am done. I am done with your lies. I am done with your mother's theatrics. And I am done funding this pathetic charade you call a family. I left him there, sitting alone at his perfectly set table for two, the candles flickering on his calculated remorse. I walked into our bedroom, locked the door, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I cried. Not for him, not for our lost marriage, but for the woman I used to be, the woman who had allowed herself to be so blind for so long. The next morning, while I was getting dressed for my shift, my phone rang. It was Loretta. I let out a long, weary sigh and answered, putting her on speakerphone as I tied the laces of my worn-out nursing shoes. Brenda, sweetheart. Her voice poured through the phone, a toxic blend of sweetness and steel. I am just heartbroken about this whole misunderstanding. Was the trip canceled, Loretta? I asked, my voice cold and clinical. Yes or no? There was a pause, a moment of calculation on her end. Well, no, dear, but we only decided to go at the very last minute, and Derek said you had picked up all those extra shifts. So, you lied. I cut her off. You all lied. It is not about the money, you know, she said quickly, changing the subject. We are so grateful for your help, of course, but family is about so much more than money. I agree, Loretta, I said, standing up and looking at my tired reflection in the mirror. Which is why I find it so confusing that I was excluded from a family event that I was paying for. It seems that to your family, I am only family when my paycheck is involved. Now that is just cruel and untrue, she snapped, the sweetness vanishing from her voice. After everything we have done for you, welcoming you in, we could lose the house now. Is that what you want? What I want, Loretta, I said, my voice as sweet as hers had been moments before, is for you to experience the consequences of your own choices. Maybe you should sell one of the boats or ask your actual family for help. The ones in all those pretty pictures. I hung up, and then one by one, I blocked their numbers. Loretta, Shanice, Derek's father Leon, even his brother Reggie. A digital amputation. It was time to start my own healing process, and the first step was cutting out the infection. The moment I severed the financial and communication lines, the war escalated. Shanice, being of the social media generation, appointed herself the family's propaganda minister. Her stories became a stream of passive-aggressive quotes. Family is not about blood. It is about who is willing to hold your hand when you need it most. Then a more direct hit. Some people will never understand sacrifice. By lunchtime, she had escalated to a full-blown post. It was a beautiful, professionally filtered photo of the lake house at sunset. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulative fiction. This place holds every childhood memory, every family celebration, every moment that mattered. Some things are worth fighting for. Real family understands that. Others just see dollar signs. Hashtag heartbroken. Hashtag family over everything. The comment section was vicious. Cousins I had met once at our wedding called me heartless. Aunts who had never once invited me to their homes labeled me selfish and a gold digger. One of Loretta's church friends, a woman named Ms. Hightower, wrote a multi-paragraph sermon on the moral failings of young wives today. It was a coordinated public shaming. I calmly took a screenshot of every single post, every vicious comment, and added it to my truth folder. Then Shanice blocked me. But the real work, the work of building my new life, was happening offline. My first move was to open a new bank account. I walked into a small local credit union, a place with no history, no connection to Derek. The woman who helped me, Patricia Evans, had kind eyes and silver streaks in her hair. She did not ask a single question when I, a married woman, asked to open a checking and savings account in my name only. Maybe she saw the desperation in my eyes, or maybe she had helped countless other women in my exact situation. "Will you be making an initial deposit today, Ms. Connolly?" she asked, using my maiden name. I slid a check across the counter. It was my overtime paycheck from that horrible weekend. $852. The irony was so perfect, so poignant, I almost smiled. The money I had earned through their deception was now the seed money for my liberation. Patricia handed me a plain blue debit card. It was not fancy, but as I held it in my hand, it felt like a key to a door I had forgotten even existed. My next step was even more liberating. During my lunch break the next day, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and logged into the Employee Human Resources portal. I navigated to the direct deposit page. For 7 years, my entire salary had gone into the joint account that Derek and his family treated as their personal slush fund. With trembling fingers, I deleted those account numbers. Then I carefully typed in the new routing and account numbers from my credit union. I clicked submit. It was done. In 2 weeks, my money would be mine again. The financial cord was cut. The most difficult and most important step came that afternoon. I had an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Ayanna Green. I had found her online, a specialist in financial and family trauma. I sat in the soft, comfortable chair in her quiet, sunlit office, and for the first time, I told the entire story to a complete stranger. I told her about the 7 years of feeling less than, about the constant financial pressure, about the $100,800, about the lies, the gaslighting, the exclusion, the other woman. The words tumbled out of me, a messy, tear-soaked confession of my own complicity in my erasure. When I finally fell silent, exhausted and empty, Dr. Green leaned forward, her expression full of a calm, professional empathy. "Brenda," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I want you to hear this very clearly. What you have been experiencing is not a misunderstanding. It is a classic, textbook pattern of financial and emotional abuse. It is real. It is valid. And none of it is your fault." Hearing those words, "abuse, not your fault," was like being pulled from deep water. I gasped a ragged, shuddering breath. I was not overreacting. I was not being cruel. I had been a victim. And in that moment, in that quiet office, I finally gave myself permission to stop being a victim and start being a survivor. I left her office with a standing appointment for the next week and a newfound resolve. I was not just going to leave him. I was going to build a life so full and so steady that he and his family would become nothing more than a bad memory. My escape plan started to take shape with a sense of urgent clarity. My first priority was a safe place to land. I spent every spare moment, my lunch breaks, the quiet moments on the night shift, scrolling through apartment listings on my phone. Everything close to the hospital was either wildly expensive or deeply depressing. I was starting to feel discouraged, wondering if I would have to move far away, when I saw it, a listing for a 1-bedroom in a building called the St. Mary's Lofts. It used to be an old Catholic school, now converted into apartments. The picture showed high ceilings, huge windows, and gleaming original hardwood floors. It was clean, it was safe, and it was only a 10-minute drive from work. I called the number immediately, my heart pounding. A warm, crackly voice answered. "Mrs. Jenkins speaking." I explained I was a nurse at the hospital and was interested in the 1-bedroom. "Ah, a nurse from St. Mary's," she said, her voice softening. "I was a nurse there myself. Retired 5 years ago. Can you come by tomorrow morning, say 10? The next morning, a Saturday, I told Derek I was picking up an extra shift, a lie that now rolled off my tongue with practiced ease. I drove to the converted schoolhouse. Mrs. Jenkins was waiting for me on the front steps, a woman in her 70s with a neat silver bun and the kind of knowing eyes that have seen it all. She led me up a wide, echoing staircase to a corner unit on the 2nd floor. When she opened the door, morning sunlight flooded the space. It was even better than the pictures. It had character. It had peace. It felt clean. "I know that look," Mrs. Jenkins said quietly as I stood in the middle of the living room, just taking it all in. It is the look of someone who desperately needs a fresh start. Is it that obvious? I asked with a weak smile. Only to someone who has been there, dear, she said, handing me a rental application. You fill this out. If you want it, it is yours. I sat on the deep windowsill, the sun warm on my back, and filled out the application. When I got to the line for my name, I did not even hesitate. I wrote Brenda Connolly. It felt like signing my own Declaration of Independence. I wrote her a check for the deposit and first month's rent from my brand new checking account. When can I move in? I asked, handing her the paperwork. She smiled and dropped a set of keys into my palm. Whenever you are ready, she said. Sometimes the best time to start over is right now. That night was Derek's monthly poker game with his brother and their friends. It was a sacred tradition. He left at 7, giving me a quick, absent-minded kiss on the cheek, already texting his friends about who was bringing the beer. The moment I heard the sound of his car fading down the street, my own operation began. There was no panic, no frantic rush. I moved through the apartment with a cold, methodical precision. I had purchased boxes and packing tape earlier that week, hiding them in the trunk of my car. I went from room to room, creating 2 piles, mine and ours. The mine pile was surprisingly small. My nursing textbooks from college. The worn-out armchair my grandmother had left me. My clothes, my personal photos, the coffee maker I had bought myself. Everything else was ours, and I left it all. The big screen television he had to have. The wedding china from his aunt that we never used. The framed photos of us smiling our practice smiles. All the accumulated stuff from 7 years of a shared life that was not really shared at all. I was shedding a skin, and I wanted to travel light. I packed my few boxes into my car, the old Honda groaning under the weight. My last act in that apartment was to set the stage for his return. On the center of the kitchen table, I placed the neat stack of printed bank statements, 36 pages of his financial betrayal. On top of the stack, I placed my wedding ring. The tiny quarter-carat diamond, the one I had always told myself was perfect because it was from him, seemed to mock me in the harsh overhead light. Beside it, I left a single handwritten note. I have withdrawn my funding and myself from this arrangement. Your family can support you now. I took one last look around the apartment that had been my home and my prison. I felt no sadness, no regret, just a profound, quiet relief. By the time Derek stumbled home from his poker game, smelling of beer and cheap cigars, I was already gone. I was in my new empty apartment, sitting on the floor in a sleeping bag, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a new beginning. I had never felt so alone or so free. The first few weeks were a blur of quiet activity. I unpacked my few boxes, arranging my small life in my new sunlit space. I bought a new set of sheets, a few fluffy towels, and a beautiful, thriving snake plant. I learned the pleasure of cooking a meal just for myself, of controlling the remote, of sleeping diagonally across the entire bed. The silence of the apartment was not oppressive. It was peaceful. It was the sound of no one asking me for anything. The fallout from my departure, however, was anything but peaceful. It came in waves, a desperate, pathetic tidal wave of manipulation and entitlement. The first voicemail from Loretta arrived on the Tuesday after I left. Her voice was cheerful, chipper, completely oblivious. "Brenda, honey, it is Mom," she began, and the sound of her calling herself that made my stomach turn. There must be some confusion at the bank. The transfer did not come through for the first of the month. Could you be a dear and check on that? Call me back. I listened to the message, a small, cold smile on my face, and then I pressed delete. The next day, another message. Her voice was less cheerful, a new edge of anxiety. Creeping in. "Brenda, the mortgage company called. This is serious now. We need that payment today. Please call us back. Derek is beside himself with worry." Delete. By Thursday, the mask of sweetness had completely disintegrated. Her voice was a shrill, angry shriek. "How could you do this to us, to family? After everything we have done for you, welcoming you into our home. We are going to lose this house, our history, because of your selfishness. I hope you can live with yourself." I actually saved that one, a little reminder of her true colors. Shanice, of course, was waging her war online. She posted a photo of the "for sale" sign stabbed into the front lawn of the lake house. Her caption was dramatic. "Thanks to some people's selfishness, a lifetime of childhood memories are being sold to the highest bidder. Some people only see dollar signs where we see a home." The comments were a fresh wave of anger. But this time, something had shifted. My hospital colleagues, who had seen me work myself to exhaustion for years, had found the post. My friend Carla, a fellow nurse, led the charge. Her response to one of Shanice's friends was sharp. It is amazing that house was affordable for 3 years on a nurse's salary, but suddenly is not now that she is gone. The math is not adding up, is it? The comment was deleted, but the damage was done. My people, my real family, were fighting for me. Derek's attempts to contact me were the most pathetic of all. First came the flowers. 24 long-stemmed red roses, delivered to the intensive care reception desk. The card read, "Please come home. I am nothing without you." Denise, the receptionist who knew all the hospital gossip, gave me a knowing look. "Want me to donate these to the cardiac ward? They will cheer the patients up." "Perfect," I said. Then came the emails, long, multi-page manifestos detailing our entire relationship, filled with twisted logic and self-pity, ending with pleas for me to reconsider. I created a filter to send them directly to my trash folder. Finally, he escalated. He showed up at the hospital. I was leaving after a long shift, walking toward my car in the employee parking lot, when I saw him leaning against it. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. His clothes were wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man whose comfortable life had been abruptly unplugged. "Brenda, please," he said as I approached, his voice strained. "Just 5 minutes. We need to talk." "There is nothing to talk about, Derek," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the asphalt beneath my feet. "Move away from my car. This is not fair. You did not even give me a chance to fix things," he whined, stepping in front of my door. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that echoed in the quiet garage. "Fair," I said, my voice rising. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me the truth. Fair would have been treating me like a wife instead of a bank. Fair would have been not sleeping with another woman on a vacation I paid for. You had 7 years of chances, Derek. You used every single one of them up." He reached out to grab my arm, and that was when a calm, authoritative voice cut through the tension. "Sir, I am going to need you to step away from the lady's vehicle." It was Officer Johnson, one of the hospital's head security guards. He was a big, steady black man who had seen me at my best and my worst over the years. He must have been watching from the security office. "This is my wife," Derek sputtered, looking flustered. "And she has asked you to move," Officer Johnson said, his hand resting casually on his radio. "Hospital property. Let us go." He gently but firmly escorted a protesting Derek toward the visitor parking lot. As he was being led away, Derek yelled back over his shoulder, a last desperate threat. "This is not over, Brenda. We are still married." I got into my car, my hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. "Not for much longer," I whispered to myself, and I drove away. The weeks that followed were a mix of liberating peace and administrative headaches. The first thing I did was hire a lawyer. I found a woman named Ms. Whitfield, whose online reviews described her as a shark in a sensible pantsuit. She was exactly what I needed. I paid her retainer from my own, untouched savings account. Another small victory that felt monumental. The first time I said the word divorce out loud in her office, it did not feel sad. It felt powerful. To truly heal, though, I knew I needed to get away. For years, I had a picture of Sedona, Arizona, taped to my refrigerator, a dream of a vacation I never thought I would be able to take. Now, with my salary firmly in my own bank account, I realized it was entirely possible. I booked a flight and a modest hotel room with a view of the Red Rocks. It was the first truly selfish, wonderful thing I had done for myself in nearly a decade. Sedona was quiet and stunning. I spent my days hiking trails that left my legs aching and my lungs burning in the best possible way. I was not running from my past. I was climbing toward my future. On the second day of my trip, while I was sitting on a sun-drenched ledge halfway up the Cathedral Rock Trail, I received the final desperate assault from Loretta. It was not a voicemail this time. It was an email, and she had sent it to everyone she had ever known. The subject line was, "The truth about Brenda." My first instinct was to delete it unread, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was 3 paragraphs of pure venom. She painted me as a cold, calculating monster who had preyed on her good-natured son, bled her family dry, and then abandoned them in their hour of need. She detailed their financial struggles, the lost lake house, Reggie's repossessed motorcycle, their humiliating move into a rental apartment, and laid it all at my feet. The email list was long. She had copied dozens of people, relatives, their church friends, even people I recognized as Derek's professional contacts. It was a public execution. A year earlier, this would have shattered me. I would have sobbed mortified. But sitting there on that red rock, looking out over the vast valley, I felt a strange and wonderful calm. She no longer had any power over me. Her words were just noise. I took a deep, cleansing breath of the dry desert air. Then I tapped reply all. My response was not emotional. It was factual. It was clinical. It was the nurse in me stating the facts of the case clearly and without embellishment. To all concerned, I typed. For 3 years, I contributed $100,800 to this family's finances. This was done under the pretense of saving a family home. During this time, I was systematically excluded from family gatherings, culminating in a recent lake trip that I was told was canceled due to budget constraints. I later discovered this trip did happen, funded by my overtime pay, and was attended by my husband and his mistress, Crystal. Your current financial struggles are not a result of my departure. They are a result of a lifestyle that was never sustainable without my salary to subsidize it. You are not struggling because I stopped giving. You are struggling because you are finally living within your actual means. I truly wish you all the best in your adjusted circumstances. Please remove me from all future communications. I read it over once, corrected a typo, and hit send. Then I turned my phone completely off, shoved it deep into my backpack, and continued my climb to the summit. I never saw the replies, and I never needed to. I had spoken my truth. The rest was just noise. My lawyer, Ms. Whitfield, handled the divorce with brutal efficiency. Derek, stripped of his financial backing and his family's enablers, was a broken man. He did not fight it. I did not ask for alimony. I just wanted my name back and my freedom. The day the papers were finalized, I did not celebrate. I simply went home to my quiet apartment, ordered my favorite pizza, and felt the final heavy chain fall away. About a year after I left, a handwritten letter with no return address appeared in my mailbox. I recognized Derek's handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away, but I opened it instead. It was not a plea to get back together. It was an apology. A real one. Brenda. It began, his handwriting smaller and less confident than I remembered. I am writing this from my studio apartment, the one I can actually afford with the 2 jobs I am working now. Funny how I never understood what real work was until I had to do it myself every day. I know it is too late, but I see it now. I see what we took from you. It was not just money. It was your dignity, your respect, your sense of belonging. We made you pay for the privilege of being excluded, and I let it happen. Worse, I orchestrated it. Mom still blames you. Shanice still posts about family loyalty. They do not get it. But I do. We were not a family to you. We were parasites. And I was the worst of them, because I was the one who was supposed to love and protect you. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I just wanted you to know that one person from that whole mess finally understands what we did to you. It was wrong. It was cruel. And you deserved so much better. I hope you found it. Derek. I read the letter once, then folded it neatly and placed it in a box labeled past. It was a period at the end of a long, painful sentence. It did not change anything, but it was an acknowledgement. That was enough. The final strange chapter of this saga came 6 months later. Mrs. Jenkins, my landlord, knocked on my door one afternoon, a look of concern on her face. She was holding the local newspaper. "Brenda, dear," she said gently, "I think you should see this." It was an obituary. Loretta had passed away from a massive heart attack at the age of 67. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. A flicker of sadness for the woman she could have been, a sense of relief that the final tie was severed. I did not go to the funeral. But Loretta had one last surprise for me from beyond the grave. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from a law firm. It seemed that in all the drama and financial collapse, Loretta had never updated her will, which had been drafted years ago when I was still the sainted, money-providing daughter-in-law. In it, she had left me her entire collection of gold and gemstone jewelry. Shanice predictably went ballistic. She and her lawyers contested it, but the will was ironclad. After a short legal battle, the collection was mine. It was appraised at just over $15,000. The very necklaces, bracelets, and rings she had worn to the parties I was not invited to. Her inheritance to me was the final ironic payment for my years of service. I did not keep a single piece. I sold the entire lot to a reputable jeweler downtown. Then I took the cashier's check for $15,000 and drove to the Maple Street Women's Shelter. a place that helps women escape abusive situations. I handed the check to the director, a tired-looking black woman with kind eyes named Ms. Carter. She stared at the amount, speechless. "This is incredible," she finally stammered. "This will fund our transitional housing program for 6 months. May I ask, is there a name you would like for the donation?" I thought for a moment, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Yes," I said. "Please list it as a donation from the family fund." Today marks exactly 2 years since I sat in that hospital break room and watched my life burn down. I volunteered for the sunrise shift this morning, wanting to mark the anniversary with meaningful work. As I drove to the hospital in the pre-dawn darkness, my new car humming quietly, the sky began to lighten into shades of peach and rose. My phone, tucked in my bag, was silent. No urgent texts. No angry voicemails. Just the sound of a classical station on the radio and the quiet, steady peace of my own life. 6 months ago, I was given a promotion to shift supervisor. The raise in my salary was nice, but the real perk is the designated parking spot close to the entrance. My little apartment, once so empty, is now filled with thriving plants and books I finally have time to read. Every Thursday evening, it is also filled with the quiet chatter of other women. I started an informal support group, Financial Boundaries for Caregivers. It turns out my story is not unique. Nurses, teachers, caretakers of all kinds, we are trained to give until it hurts. I am helping them learn to stop. I am helping them find their own escape routes. As I walk toward the glowing entrance of the hospital this morning, the automatic doors sense my approach and slide open with a familiar whoosh. The air inside is cool and smells of antiseptic, a smell that no longer reminds me of crisis in a supply closet, but of purpose, of healing, of home. I step inside, ready for the day, finally at peace, finally whole, and finally completely free. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.